Okay, this is my composition I have here, showing you my darks and lights. This was a view I had early in the morning, sitting at the kitchen table, and the sun was coming through the window, shining up on the wall. And this was the window pane that came through, but the cast shadow on all these objects here, on the cast shadow on the wall, is what really attracted my attention. The area in here. So I'm gonna do a painting of this, and this is really going to be experimental, because it's really going to go into how I feel about this. I feel that this was an early morning scene, and I felt like the lights really hit the wall, and I'm going to do some coloration here. I'm going to use, on my palette, I'm going to use just the primary colors. I'm going to use a cobalt blue, pyro red, and I'm going to use a little bit of yellow, and I'm going to use quinacridone gold, which is a yellow. So I'm just going to use the primary colors to do this whole painting. That's my vision, and that's going to be my starting point. So let's see how it goes. First, I'm going to mix up a fresh color here, and the first color I'm going to paint in the light. So I'm going to start out with a very light color, and I'm not going to leave it white. So I'm going to put a little color in there to show the color of the light itself. So I'm going to use a little bit of that quinacridone gold, a little bit of pyro red, and it's going to be very, very light. My concept here is to get the feeling of the warmth of that sun coming through the window, hitting up onto the wall. Now I gotta let that dry, because when I put the shadows in, I don't want to go. I want it to be dry, so because I'm going to have more or less a hard edge here, so I have to let this painting dry. Okay, next step is dry, and I touch the back of my hand. It's dry, and I'm going to mix up a light gray for the shadow on the wall. I'm going to use the primary color. We'll start with just a touch of blue, quinacridone gold, and a very, very light touch of red. Putting the primaries together will give me a gray. And the more blue and the more red I put into that, the darker the gray will be. Now I'll take a test sheet here. Not gray enough. I always test out my mixture on a spare piece of watercolor paper. Okay, add a little more blue and a little more red in there. Let's check it out one more time. Okay. Okay. Now I know the color will also dry lighter. White watercolor always dries lighter. So I'm going to come down here and put this shadow pattern that I saw cast against the wall. And it cast the shape of the window, which had a curve to it. It was just very interesting the way this showed up. Okay, now I'm going to let that dry. Okay, oh, I forgot one section down here I need to capture. So that same value there was a box over here which had a cast shadow on it. It has a light area and a darker. So I'm going to put the lighter and then go over it later with a darker value. But I want to get the base tone down here on this particular box over here with its shape. Yeah, I have to let that dry too, because I want to go back over this section here with a darker value, so I have to let that dry. Okay, my next step is to get the next darker gray. So I mix a little darker value, a little more blue, touch of red, a little bit of yellow, and this value here is darker with a cast shadow, and it has a shape to it. Now I'll take the round brush, number 8 round brush. I also had some shapes in here, which I'm going to put in some color, maybe a little bit of purple or something here. It had shapes in here, so I'm going to simulate that it had a shape to it. It was drawers to a cabinet that had shadow on it. So what I want to do is simulate here some of the background values. It's still wet, but I'm going to go ahead and put a couple marks in here just to give us some idea that there was something there. Okay, one more value change. I'm going to add one more dark area of painting. Again, I'm mixing the primaries, the blue, cobalt blue, pyrrole red, and quinacridone violet. Oh, excuse me, quinacridone gold. This will be the dark. This will be my darkest gray, or almost black. But this will be the biggest contrast. I had to make them really darker. I'm mixing these primary colors will give me a gray. And I'll take my test sheet. Okay, darker than that, so I got to add some more blue, a touch of red, a little bit of yellow. Okay, that's the color I want. Okay, so with a dark, now I'm going to use switching brushes. This is a smaller area. I'm going to use the 1/2 inch flat silver brush. These are natural brushes I'm using today, and they really flow nicely. They load lots of paints. Okay, this little area here, this was the area that was really in shadow, and it was the most interesting part of the whole scene. This was the cast shadow from the box and from the window across this other area. So it's just really caught my eye and caught my attention. So I said I have to draw this, and then when I drew it, I said I have to paint this. So that's what I'm doing today. I'll take the smaller brush, the number 8 round. I'm going to go in here, put just a small amount of detail. Okay. Now I got one more area to put on, but I'm going to let this dry and I'll come back. I'll put one more little detail and I'll be finished with the painting. Okay, the last area I want to get is the in the shadow, and I got to go back to the lighter color. So let me pull out some of this dark gray, and I need to go back and mix up the light gray again. The light gray mix, which I started out with. Lots of water. Okay. Add some more water to it. I'll check it out on my there. Okay. I'll take the smaller brush, load it, and I'll put in these shadow. These were parts of the window that were. These are the shadows from the window that showed up in this particular area. This is what really caught my eye, was the shape and the shine of the sun on the wall. It gave me this unique look. So the vision I had was to capture this shape. So I drew it up on a sketch pad. I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to make sure these are nice and straight. And these, of course, this is going to dry much lighter. They look dark now. Watercolor always looks darker when it's wet, but when it dries, it dries lighter. So I'm going to leave that. And what I'm going to do, the last step I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back with the same colors, lighter color, with a 1/2 inch brush. I'm going to go over this area just a little bit. I want to fuzz up that. There's not much detail here, just enough detail to indicate there's something there. And that's all I want to show, just to show there's something there. Okay, now I'm going to let that dry, and I'll come back. I'm going to block that out. I'm going to crop that out and let you see what I saw from my vantage point when I took I did a drawing, a sketch. You can see here, this is my sketch that I sketched. And from that sketch I did a drawing to the paper. This is a 4x4 size. The painting here is a 6x6.